And thank you all for making the choice to gather here today in honor of those lost in service to our nation. Our ability to gather here today is equal to the sum of the hundreds of thousands of lives lost in the defense of our freedoms. Our main purpose is to remember those we've lost, that their sacrifice is not in vain. Please also remember that this day is especially difficult for so many who lost friends and family in the struggle to maintain our freedom. We really have two purposes today: to remember those who are gone and also to support one another, especially those who struggle the most on Memorial Day. Your attendance here today is the most basic form of support and appreciation, and on behalf of members of the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard, as a member of this community, I thank you. Before I pass the microphone, I'd like to remember two Coast Guardsmen, both former members of Coast Guard Station Depoe Bay, Petty Officer First Class Charles Sexton and Master Chief Petty Officer Dave Duran. January 11th, 1991, Petty Officer Sexton launched aboard Motor Lifeboat 44381 to assist the fishing vessel Sea King, which was taking on water across the Columbia River Bar. After several pumps were passed, one of the fishermen was injured. Petty Officer Sexton, who was a qualified emergency medical technician, volunteered to go across and help assess the patient. After stabilizing the situation, several hours later, the vessel had continued to take on water in a compartment that they were unaware of. And as he orchestrated several different pumps that were running and dewatering the vessel, it suddenly overturned and he went down with the boat. Secondly, Master Chief Dave Duran, former officer in charge of Coast Guard Station Depoe Bay, was a two-time recipient of the Coast Guard Medal for Extraordinary Heroism, both earned here at Depoe Bay. One in rescue of two boys that had been swept off the beach, and the other in rescue of a vessel that had overturned at the mouth of the Siletz Bay. Master Chief Duran did so much more than save lives here. He was a leader in the community. He was, to use a modern lexicon, an influencer, and he used his influence on others to do one of the most noblest things one can do, which is to save lives. So today, I ask that you remember these Coast Guardsmen and their loved ones in your thoughts and prayers. It is now my pleasure to introduce Mr. James Rand, publisher of the Newport News-Times, our local newspaper. Jamie has prepared a welcome for all of you that have come today to participate in the Fleet of Flowers.
Good morning. Thank you, Senior Chief, for the kind introduction. I am deeply honored to be hosting today's event as we gather for Depoe Bay's 71st annual Fleet of Flowers in tribute of the memory of Roy Bauer and Jack Chambers, who were lost at sea on October 4th, 1936, in an effort to rescue their fellow seamen. In recognition of that heroic deed, the two men were posthumously bestowed the Carnegie Heroes Medal. Last year, the family of Jack Chambers presented his medal to the Fleet of Flowers Committee in honor of this remembrance of their loved one. Today, may we recognize our fishermen, our Coast Guardsmen, and remember all of those that are lost at sea on this Memorial Day. I would first like to recognize Dockside and Trey Winds Charters, as well as the vessel captains and crew members of the Depoe Bay Fleet, who helped further the tradition of allowing citizens to board their vessels and become part of the experience of laying the wreaths on the sea. I'd also like to introduce some of our distinguished ceremony guests, starting with Chief Depoe, the great-grandson of the founder of Depoe Bay. Captain Craig Eisenbeis, U.S. Coast Guard retired. Master Chief Thomas McAdams, U.S. Coast Guard retired. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary Flotilla 53. the Oregon Coast Veterans Association, the Depoe Bay Fire Department, and the Oregon State Police. The Fleet of Flowers is both a somber and a joyful celebration for all of us here on the Central Oregon coast. We honor the men and women who have given of their time, their youth, their strength, their endurance, and the family moments to serve their country and provide for their families. We pay profound tribute to the men and women who have given the ultimate sacrifice, their lives, to rescue their fellow seamen and to secure the safety and freedom of this great nation. Finally, we stand together to embrace and celebrate the bravery of our fishing community and the valor of the Coast Guardsmen who watch over their safety. For 130 years, the pages of the News Times have shown the intense love-hate relationship resident fishermen have with the Pacific Ocean, and the many years of sacrifice by the Coast Guard's men and women whose daily rescue mission involves keeping those safe whose livelihood is dependent on the sea. It was in October of 2014 that the story of this relationship came to life for me when I attended a town hall meeting concerning the closure of the Coast Guard's air facility in Newport, Oregon. As 250 community members, primarily from the fishing community, emotionally denounced the decision, it was clear that the Coast Guardsmen were also truly pained by the decision. You could see it in their eyes. It was in that moment that I fully appreciated the relationship between the fishing community on the Central Oregon coast. It is not one of obligation, but it is one of dedication to their fellow man. I imagine that Roy Bauer and Jack Chambers shared that same dedication 71 years ago for their fellow man, as our Coast Guard service men and women do today. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce the mayor of Depoe Bay, AJ Matala. He will give the presentation of appreciation. AJ.